Welcome back to 15-Minute Discourse. Today, we're going to be diving into the world of DNA data storage. We're excited to kind of unpack, the most intriguing insights. It's a pretty complex topic, but don't worry, we're going to guide you through it step by step. So by the end, you'll have a solid understanding of the potential of this, this game-changing technology.
Yeah, it really is a field that's moving incredibly fast.
We'll start with the basics of how data can be stored in DNA, and then we'll explore why DNA is such a promising storage medium compared to, our current methods. The advantages are mind-boggling, but of course, no technology is perfect. So we'll also touch on the challenges that researchers are facing and the solutions that they're developing.
Well, one of the things that's really driving the need for new storage solutions is the sheer amount of data we're generating. It's growing at an alarming rate. I mean, in 2018 alone, we created 33 zettabytes of data. To put that in perspective, a zettabyte is a trillion gigabytes. It's a number most people can't even fathom.
Right. It's really hard to even imagine. And it's only going to get worse, right? Or I guess more extreme.
Absolutely. Projections show that by 2025, we could be generating a staggering 175 zettabytes of data annually. This exponential growth presents a huge challenge for our traditional storage methods. They simply can't keep up.
Right. So we're facing this data storage crisis, and that's where DNA comes in.
Exactly. DNA is incredibly efficient at storing information. Just think about it. The entire blueprint for a complex living organism is encoded in its DNA.
Yeah, that's true. But how do we go from digital data, the ones and zeros on our computers, to something that's encoded in DNA?
It's actually a very fascinating process. It starts by converting a digital file, let's say a photo, into a string of binary digits. We call it a bit stream. And then that bit stream is translated into the 4 basic building blocks of DNA: adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine, often represented by the letters A, T, G, and C.
Oh, so it's like a code where different combinations of these DNA letters represent the ones and zeros of the original digital file.
That's exactly it. Once the DNA sequence is designed, it's synthesized, creating actual physical strands of DNA that contain the encoded data. And this synthesized DNA can be stored in a very compact form.
It's almost like printing a physical copy of your digital data, but on a microscopic scale. And to get the data back, these DNA strands are sequenced, right?
That's right. Sequencing basically means figuring out the order of those A's, T's, G's, and C's. Once you have that DNA sequence, you just reverse the encoding process, and voila, you retrieve the original digital file.
It sounds like a very high-tech molecular version of translating languages. Now let's talk about why DNA is such a promising storage medium. I think one of the most compelling aspects is its longevity.
Absolutely. I mean, DNA can last for thousands of years under the right conditions. We've even recovered DNA from ancient organisms like mammoths, and the information in that DNA is still readable. That kind of longevity is unheard of in conventional storage technologies.
I mean, our current hard drives seem incredibly fragile compared to that.
Oh, they pale in comparison. And it's not just about how long DNA can last, it's also about how much information it can store in such a small space. The information density of DNA is just incredible.
Yeah, I remember reading that. Just 5 grams of DNA could theoretically hold an entire zettabyte of data. It's just astounding when you consider how much space we currently need to store that much information.
It really is a mind-boggling difference in scale. 5 grams of DNA is less than the weight of a nickel, and it could potentially replace massive data centers. Along with its longevity and density, DNA is also incredibly stable, especially when stored properly.
But isn't DNA kind of a fragile molecule? I mean, it is a biological material. Wouldn't it degrade quickly?
That's a common misconception. While DNA can be susceptible to damage from things like heat and radiation, it's remarkably stable under the right conditions. Scientists can encapsulate DNA and store it at low temperatures for incredibly long periods, preserving it for future generations.
So it's like the perfect solution for long-term archiving.
It has tremendous potential, and there's even research being done on storing DNA at room temperature, using additives like tracylose, which is a type of sugar. If that becomes feasible, it would further revolutionize how we think about data storage.
Wow, room temperature storage would be a real game changer. I mean, it would make DNA storage much more practical for everyday use.
Exactly. It would make the technology even more accessible.
Okay, so DNA data storage seems like it has a lot of advantages, but I'm sure there must be some downsides too, right?
Of course. There are always challenges with any new technology. With DNA data storage, some of the biggest hurdles right now are cost, speed, and error correction.
Let's start with cost. I imagine synthesizing DNA is a very expensive process.
You're absolutely right. Right now, synthesizing DNA on a large scale is very costly, which makes it impractical for, most applications. However, scientists are exploring new methods, like enzymatic synthesis, that could dramatically reduce those costs.
Enzymatic synthesis. Can you explain how that works?
Sure, it involves using enzymes, which are biological catalysts that speed up chemical reactions. You can think of them as tiny molecular machines that can build DNA strands more efficiently and potentially at a much lower cost than our current methods.
So it's like a more efficient way to print DNA strands, making the whole process more affordable.
That's a great way to think about it.
What about speed? Is reading and writing data to and from DNA slower than our current methods?
It's true that reading and writing data to and from DNA is currently slower than electronic storage methods like hard drives or flash memory. But just like with synthesis, new technologies are constantly being developed. For example, nanopore sequencing is a new technique that's improving the speed at which we can read data from DNA.
So there's hope on the horizon for improving the speed as well.
Absolutely.
What about error correction?
Errors can occur during the synthesis, storage, or sequencing of DNA.
That makes sense. I mean, DNA is such a complex molecule. I imagine even small errors could lead to data corruption.
You're right. That's why researchers are developing robust coding schemes to ensure that data stored in DNA is accurately retrieved, even if some errors occur.
So it's like a molecular version of error checking software, but even more advanced.
Precisely. One method they're using is called Reed-Solomon coding. You can think of it as a way to add redundancy to the data, like having backup copies of each piece of information. This redundancy allows the system to detect and correct errors, ensuring the integrity of the data.
That's reassuring. It sounds like the challenges are real, but scientists are making significant strides in overcoming them.
It's a very exciting time in the field. We're constantly seeing new breakthroughs.
Well, I'm definitely starting to see why there's so much buzz around DNA data storage. It has the potential to revolutionize how we handle information, from archiving historical records to developing new computing technologies.
I think we've only just scratched the surface of what's possible. Now, let's dive into some of the cutting-edge advancements and the potential applications that make this field so captivating.
Yeah, you know, one of the concepts we touched on that I found really fascinating was this idea of random access, which sounds like it's really crucial if we want to use DNA storage for, practical purposes. Because sifting through like massive amounts of DNA to find a specific file would be incredibly inefficient.
You're absolutely right. Random access is essential for making DNA data storage, a viable technology. Imagine trying to find a single photo in a DNA archive that contains millions of files. It would be like searching for a needle in a haystack.
Right. Not exactly user-friendly.
Not at all. And that's why researchers are developing methods to tag specific data sets within the DNA, allowing for targeted retrieval. It's similar to how we organize digital data, with file names and folders, but at the molecular level.
So we're essentially giving each piece of data like a molecular address, so we can find it, quickly and easily.
That's a good analogy. Some of these techniques involve attaching specific sequences to the DNA strands that act as identifiers. These identifiers can then be used to isolate the desired data using methods like, PCR amplification or magnetic bead extraction.
So it sounds like it's like molecular biology and computer science really coming together to solve a complex problem. Now let's shift gears a little bit and talk about DNA of things, which is, we talk about embedding DNA into everyday objects. It kind of sounds like something straight out of science fiction.
It might sound futuristic, but it's closer than you think. The potential applications for DNA of things are vast. One area that's gaining a lot of traction is product authentication. Counterfeit goods are a huge problem globally, costing businesses and consumers billions of dollars each year.
Yeah. It's a problem that affects pretty much every industry, from, luxury goods to pharmaceuticals.
Exactly. And DNA tagging offers a way to create, virtually unbreakable authentication systems. Imagine embedding a unique DNA signature into a product during manufacturing. This signature would be impossible to forge and could be used to verify the product's authenticity throughout its entire life cycle.
So it's like having a molecular fingerprint for every product, ensuring its genuineness. It would be a huge win for both businesses and consumers.
Absolutely. And beyond authentication, DNA of things could also revolutionize manufacturing and supply chain management. We touched on this earlier, with the example of a car part. That contains its entire manufacturing history, encoded in its DNA.
Right. So if a mechanic needed to repair your car years down the line, they could just sequence a tiny sample of that part and instantly access all the relevant information about it.
Precisely. It would provide, an unprecedented level of traceability and transparency throughout the life cycle of a product, from its raw materials to its assembly and distribution.
It seems like it would have huge implications for recycling as well.
You're absolutely right. With detailed information about the materials and construction of a product encoded in its DNA, recycling could become much more efficient and effective.
It's amazing how DNA, this fundamental building block of life, is now being used to solve these complex technological challenges.
It really is a testament to the power of, interdisciplinary research and the incredible versatility of DNA.
Now, in another area that I think really captured my imagination is this idea of in vivo recording, using living cells to store data. It sounds both fascinating and a bit unnerving.
It's definitely a frontier with tremendous potential, but also some ethical considerations. To understand how it works, we need to talk about CRISPR, which is a groundbreaking gene editing tool.
I've heard of CRISPR being used to treat, genetic diseases, but I had no idea it could be used for data storage.
Yeah, CRISPR is a remarkably versatile tool. In the context of data storage, researchers aren't using it to edit genes, but rather using CRISPR to write a code within the cell's DNA itself.
Exactly. And because these changes are heritable, meaning they're passed down to the cell's offspring, the data can be stored and replicated within a living lineage.
So it's like a cellular diary that records events that happen to the cell and passes that information down through generations.
That's a great way to think about it. Researchers are using this technique to track events like cell division or exposure to specific stimuli. This information can be invaluable for understanding, how cells develop and respond to their environment.
So it's like having a living sensor that records its own history. Pretty fascinating to think about the possibilities. Absolutely. It could revolutionize fields like developmental biology, drug discovery, and even disease diagnostics. Imagine having cells that record their own exposure to toxins or pathogens. It could lead to incredibly sensitive and personalized diagnostic tools.
Wow, that's amazing. Are there limitations to what kind of data could be stored this way?
Right now, in vivo recording is mainly focused on storing relatively simple data, like tracking specific events in a cell's life. Storing complex data like images or videos in living cells is still a long way off.
Okay, so maybe not our movie collections just yet, but still, incredibly exciting area of research.
Absolutely. It's a testament to the ingenuity and creativity of, scientists working in this field.
Now, in the last part, we also briefly mentioned DNA computing. I'm still struggling to grasp how DNA, which is a biological molecule, can be used for computation.
It is a mind-bending concept, but it's rooted in the idea that DNA can be programmed to interact in specific ways, just like the circuits in a computer. Remember how we talked about DNA being like a code?
Right. Different sequences of DNA letters carry different instructions. It's like a set of molecular instructions.
Exactly. And researchers are developing ways to design DNA sequences that can interact with each other in predictable ways, performing calculations based on those interactions.
So it's like building tiny biological computers, using DNA as the building blocks.
That's a great way to think about it. It's still early days, but the potential is enormous.
Imagine having computers that can operate at the molecular level, potentially performing incredibly complex calculations with just incredible efficiency.
And the real game changer is the potential to integrate DNA computing with DNA data storage.
So you could have a system that stores and processes information within the same molecular framework.
Precisely. It would allow for incredibly dense and efficient computing systems, potentially even self-replicating systems, although that's still very much in the realm of speculation.
Self-replicating computers. Now that's getting into some truly mind-blowing territory.
It's an area of research that really pushes the boundaries of our imagination.
It seems like we've only scratched the surface of what's possible with DNA technology.
I think we are really in the early chapters of a technological revolution, and the possibilities are incredibly exciting.
Before we wrap up this episode, I want to kind of delve into the broader implications of this technology and some of the ethical considerations we need to be thinking about.
I think it's really crucial to have those conversations as this technology develops.
Absolutely. But now in this final part, I want to step back a little bit and consider the broader implications of DNA data storage and some of the ethical considerations that come with it.
It's definitely crucial to have these discussions, especially as this technology advances. You know how we manage and access information. It has profound implications for society as a whole.
Absolutely. So let's start with the potential impact. How might DNA data storage change the world as we know it? I mean, it's clear that it has the potential to revolutionize how we archive and preserve information.
Imagine being able to store all of human history, our scientific knowledge, cultural artifacts, in a format that could last for millennia. We're talking about a molecular time capsule that could preserve our collective knowledge for future generations in a way that's never been possible before.
Future generations could access our knowledge and experiences in ways that we can't even imagine. It's almost like having a direct link to our ancestors.
Exactly. It could reshape fields like archaeology, paleontology, genealogy, allowing us to unlock secrets from the past and gain a deeper understanding of our origins.
Yeah. It's really fascinating to think about how this technology could connect us to both the past and the future. But it's not just about historical preservation, right? DNA data storage also has the potential to transform the future of computing.
That's right. As we discussed earlier, the integration of DNA computing and storage could lead to these incredibly powerful and efficient computing systems. We're talking about biocomputers that can learn, adapt, and potentially even self-repair, really blurring the lines between biology and technology. And it's a rapidly evolving field, and while we're still in the early stages, the possibilities are truly mind-boggling.
This tiny molecule that carries the blueprint of life could also become the foundation of our technological future. It's a remarkable convergence of biology and technology. But as with any powerful technology, there are ethical considerations that we need to address, right?
You're absolutely right. One of the most pressing concerns is data privacy and security. DNA contains incredibly sensitive information, and we need to ensure that data stored in DNA is protected from unauthorized access or misuse.
It's like having our most personal information written in a molecular code. We need, like, really robust security measures to safeguard that information.
Absolutely. And it's not just about protecting individual privacy. There are also questions of equity and access. Who will control this technology? Will it be accessible to everyone, or will it further exacerbate existing inequalities?
That's a really critical point. We need to make sure that the benefits of DNA data storage are shared widely and don't just become another tool for the privileged few.
We also need to consider the environmental impact. Synthesizing DNA requires resources and energy. And as we scale up this technology, we need to develop sustainable practices to minimize its environmental footprint.
It's a good reminder that technological innovation must go hand in hand with environmental responsibility.
Absolutely. And finally, perhaps most importantly, we need to be mindful of unintended consequences. We're entering uncharted territory with DNA data storage, and it's crucial to proceed cautiously, anticipating potential risks, and developing safeguards before they arise.
It's a bit like opening Pandora's box. There's incredible potential there, but also the possibility of unforeseen challenges. It seems clear that DNA data storage is a technology with the power to reshape the world in profound ways, but it's up to us to guide its development responsibly, ethically, and inclusively.
It's a collective responsibility that requires collaboration between scientists, policymakers, ethicists, and the public. We need to have open and honest conversations about the potential benefits and risks of this technology, ensuring that its development aligns with our values and aspirations for the future.
It's not just about the science or the technology. It's about shaping a future where this incredible tool is used to benefit all of humanity.
It's about harnessing the power of DNA, the very essence of life, to create a better world for generations to come.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into DNA data storage, what are your final thoughts for our listeners?
I would encourage everyone to stay informed, ask questions, engage in the ongoing conversations about this transformative technology. The future of DNA data storage is in our hands.
Well, thank you for joining us for this exploration into the world of DNA data storage. It's been an incredible journey, and we hope you found it as fascinating as we did.
It was a pleasure sharing this information with you.
Don't forget to like and subscribe to 15-Minute Discourse for more thought-provoking discussions about science, technology, and the future.
Until next time.